Okay. So who was was Scott up or Jeff?
Scott did not respond, and Daniel Jones did not respond. So next on the list is we had Deirdre, we had Aaron. How about Carol Flint?
Hi, my name's Carol Flint. I work for the Department of Public Service in the Consumer Affairs and Public Information Division. And I'm here to listen to what folks have to say about the Clean Heat Standard in terms of how it informs our work with the public. Thanks for doing this.
Okay.
Daniel Jones, are you with us? You are on mute. No? Okay, how about Jeff?
Hi, I'm Jeff Wilcox. I work for the State of Vermont Office of Economic Opportunity. We administer and oversee the statewide low-income weatherization program. The mission of our program is to save energy for income-eligible clients in order to save energy and reduce their heating and electric bills. Thanks.
Henry Malk?
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Henry Mock. I, like Carol, work for the Department of Public Service. For anybody who doesn't know, we're an agency in the executive branch of the government, and we represent, or we're charged with representing the public in interests involving energy, telecommunications, utility regulation. So the Clean Heat Standard is something that we've been involved with since the beginning, and yeah, I'm also looking forward to hearing some different perspectives. So thank you for putting this on, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. I don't believe we've heard from Annette Smith yet.
I'm Annette Smith, Executive Director of Vermonters for a Clean Environment. I live in Danby. Vermonters for a Clean Environment has been working in Vermont communities for the last 25 years. We help raise people's voices about environmental issues and help people participate in regulatory proceedings, and have spent a lot of time on energy issues in the last decade or more.
Tracy Myers.
Hi, good evening. I'm Tracy Myers, staff attorney with the PUC, and I am excited to sit in on this interaction.
And two more. Scott Pinkham, are you with us now? You're on mute if you're listening. Okay, and then Daniel Jones will try you again. You are also on mute. Okay, I think that just leaves the Vermont Partnership people. Curtis, would you like to go first?
Sure. Curtis Reed, Executive Director of Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity. We are excited to be part of this process of bringing information about the Clean Heat Standard to populations that typically aren't part of this conversation. And then I think Alana is there.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Alana Hart. I work with the Vermont Partnership, doing some of our qualitative research and aggregating and disaggregating data. And I'm happy to be here working on this project with you all.
Great.
And then that just leaves me, I guess. I'm Gemma Seymour. I live in Brattleboro, and I am the coordinator of special projects for Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity, which means I handle all of the administrative and technical stuff. So feel free to complain to me if you have complaints, and I will try to address them as well as I can. I'm also a renter here in Brattleboro, so I have some concerns, particularly in that direction. And as well as being a social justice activist, I am also an environmental activist. So I'm really hoping that the clean heat standard really moves Vermont forward in addressing questions of equity, access, and sustainability.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for all that are here, and hopefully we'll have another 10 or so to join us as we move along. So a little bit about what we've done so far. First of all, this is that old dot in the middle of that old dot is me right here. And antithetical to the environment we find in Vermont, I lived in the Sahara Desert for about 15 years. And what we've done up to date to prepare for this, and I work with the PUC, is we've done 3 email blasts to at least 500 individuals and organizations, about 2/3 of which are managed and governed by Vermonters of color, to bring the word of clean energy and the clean heat standard into their radar screens. Over half have opened and clicked on one of the links in the emails that we've sent out. We rendered Act 18 into simple language. You have a summary of that. I believe each of you have a copy of the summary. But we did, in fact, do the entire 41 pages. It was actually done by one of our colleagues, Jameson Davis, who is an environmental lawyer.
Curtis, really quickly, we can't see slides if you're intending for us to see slides right now.
Oh, you can't see slides?
Nope.
It says I'm sharing my screen.
I can see slides. It's just in
I see the
presentation.
I can
Sahara.
see it. Yeah, I see slide. This is 4 of 11. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and fix me.
But it is still in presentation mode. I don't know if you care about that because it's a little bit, people can see your next slide and your current slide.
Oh,
It's not that important that changes, but just so you know. It might be that third icon in that ribbon where it says, if you go to that ribbon to the left of slide 4 of 11, there's like a little presentation view, like presentation stand. That might do it. I'm not sure. Nope, didn't work. Okay,
didn't work?
sorry.
No, that didn't work. Okay, well.
Anyway, it's fine.
Right. So anyway, so our work up to this point has, we find ourselves on a really steep learning curve. We've reviewed all the 41 pages of the Act 18 legislation. There's a 120+ point flowchart description, the decision tree that Ben Balinst prepared, that we've been going through. We've gone through 40+ hours of meeting recordings. We've done samples, but we know that there are at least 40+ hours. Um, we've learned that there's stakeholders with competing interests, and then we've attended both TAG and Technical Assistant Group and Equity Advisory Group meetings. And you know what what we've learned is that there is, we're building the plane as we fly. I think there's so many moving parts that not all the parts are aware of what the other parts are doing. Not that we have a handle on all the parts, but that it's become apparent as we talk to people up and down the hierarchy that that there are still a lot of unanswered questions. For example, can homeowners claim energy credits? And if so, how are they monetized? What regulatory framework will tie all the pieces together? And I think there's a theoretical answer to that question and a practical answer to that question. And I think the legislation lays out a framework, but is that actually working? How prices will change, we don't, what and how they will change. How and who will set new rates for fuel. And then, Gemma's point as a renter, how will the nearly 76,000 households that rent, how will they benefit from the program? So I want to spend some time talking about in terms of what is our collective understanding of the clean heat standard. And this is actually for the general public, but we don't seem to have a lot of the public present to ask what more do you need to know about the clean heat standard in order to actually do something about it in terms of what motivates their behavioral change. And then where do they get their information? So I think I'm going to pull out of this, and I think we're a small enough group. I'll stop sharing. There we go. Okay, that looks familiar. So how do we frame the clean heat standard to the general public? And we're going to do some follow-up to find out why the general public not all of the general public who registered, what kept them from this evening. But so Daniel, since you're part of the public, and Scott, what is your understanding of the clean heat standard? And where do you see points where we could make it more accessible to the general public?
Scott and Daniel, you are both still on mute. So if you are speaking, we cannot hear you. Carol Flint, how about you?
Hi, mostly I was here to listen in hopes that members of the public would be in attendance. So my own personal opinions about that clean heat standard is all about, helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and it's a laudable goal. And I think that there are serious equity concerns around affordability for people. It's challenging. So I think that's an important concern to raise.
Mm-hmm. Scott or anyone else, just open it up.
Hi, this is Dan Fingus. So when I'm talking to folks at town energy committees, there's about 130 of them in different towns in the state, and we work with a lot of them, trying to talk through what the clean heat standard is. Based on the conversations I've had, it seems like talking about other efforts we've had in the past, like 25 years ago when the state decided it wanted to reduce its electric consumption, and so created Efficiency Vermont and started, creating programs to lessen our electricity. This is a similar type of thing, but in the fuel sector, in the thermal sector. And so really looking at ways that we can create a similar benefits that get people off of these harmful fossil fuels, and in doing it in ways that, are affordable and that everyone across income classes, and whether you're a renter or an owner, can take part in. That's the goal of the legislation. And so I think we, potentially could use examples of things we've done that are hard and in this space before as a way to explain what this would do.
Mm-hmm. And how do renters get involved?
I mean, I think you have to create the benefits for renters. You have to create the benefits, the reason for landlords to take it on as a project, and think of ways to make it so that the person who's paying the energy bill has the power to do some of this stuff. If the landlord's paying the energy bill, then it would be on them. But if the renter is paying the energy bill, they're the ones having to deal with this potentially increased cost, or having to deal with this system. And I think it's just finding ways to either incentivize, mandate landlords, do different things. And I think it's creating those systems. And I think, we're finding better ways to get renters, weatherization and other things that are, some of them work, some of them don't. I think it's going to be similar to Efficiency Vermont, where it's 20 years of programs, and some of them have been really, really successful, and some of them we've had to retool over time. So we just have to look to that model.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if renters accrue some sort of energy credit for weatherizing their apartments, how do they monetize those credits?
I mean, I'm not sure if it's about renter themselves getting an energy credit, right? I mean, I think it's similar, the distributors have an obligation. And so much like Green Mountain Power has an obligation to lessen electricity use, and then therefore they contract with Efficiency Vermont and create programs, create benefits so that they, it would be very similar. I don't think that the market should be at the homeowner or renter level. It doesn't seem, and maybe others are smarter on this than me, but that's, it seems like that the very similar to what we have in the electric sector, the market is higher than that, and that there would be benefits. So whether it's tax credits or just straight paying for things, or there's all these different programs in weatherization and electrification, and there's some federal money that comes down in those areas. It would be a similar, hopefully try to find a similar way to do it. But it would be transitioning from, a fossil fuel and a heating oil situation to electric or to a more efficient heating oil.
Mhm. So would you suggest then that our target audience ought to be fuel dealers and installers of heat pumps, and because they're the ones that would accrue the credits and not so much the individual renters?
Well, the distributors are the obligated party, but I think you need to figure out from renters and from landlords and from homeowners, like what would it take for them to shift, right? And then build programs based on that knowledge. But those programs would be at either at the what is it, default something agent, default delivery agent,
Mhm.
and through the distributors, right? So like, we need to know from regular people what would make them change from what they're doing right now that might be harming the environment and also costing them a lot of money. What would be the thing that would nudge or push them into making the change? And then it's just creating those beneficial programs and getting people involved, I think.
Mhm. Okay. So if you're a renter and you're paying for your own heating cost, if you make a capital improvement to the landlord's house so that you get to save, the landlord benefits indirectly or directly, actually, because they have a tighter apartment.
Yeah, no, they would benefit because their apartment would be potentially worth more. I mean, this is why I like models with like on-bill financing that they're starting to do with weatherization and some of them VHA-FA programs. It would stay with that like that apartment number or that house that you're renting. So like if you get the work done, like maybe if it's a loan amount, but also the benefits would stay with that. And I think there's like different states have done this where it is on the kind of the residence rather than like on an individual person. I don't know if I mean you can look into the VHFA program, but it's
Yeah, but
weatherization assistance program. But there are programs out there. There are models for helping. And I think to me, the public input hopefully is like finding out what people are worried about, what they're worried about affordability specifically. Whether it's they're worried that they're, on a fossil fuel system, they're on propane or on something that the cost of it just keeps going up and up and up, and they already can't pay it, so they don't want something that's going to make them pay more, or whether they're worried about, the health concerns or like actual like air quality, other concerns with their system. Like there's all sorts of things that are concerns. You got to figure out what those concerns are and then try to build programs around that.
Dan, since you're here and willing to talk, can I ask you, when you're talking to the energy committees, is clean heat with that name a topic that people recognize, one, and two, have they brought any concerns about this to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so town energy committees have existed for about 15 years in the state. And some towns have started right away and 15 years ago, and some are actually building. There's 3 towns that are building them right now. So they're all in very different places. The kind of low-hanging fruit that most of them worked on originally was things like weatherization, some solar, those kinds of things. I think as there's programs available, whether, in any of the sectors, transportation, thermal, they're ready to jump on them and like turn them, but they're very like, if there's program that they can turn people to, if there's a way people can, for free or for low cost, they can get people engaged in changing their house, whether that's weatherization or whatever, they're ready to like, go out in their community, talk to as many people, get them to do it. The program has to exist, I think, is the thing. And so, yes, people are, would love, many local folks that I talk to would love to help their neighbors, shift to a cheaper system that's electric. So it's also because they're personally passionate, as these town energy committee folks, actually like lessening the pollution, lessening the greenhouse gases. That's why they're doing it, because they're really passionate about it. they're usually talking to people about how it, you know, is money saving and like better for the community, things like that.
Right. Jeff,
You're muted, Jeff.
Sorry. So again, I worked for the weatherization program at the state for the last 17 years and well, whatever the math is, eight years prior, total to 25 years. For 8 years, I was an energy auditor for one of our low-income providers, Capstone. And I think I can speak for a lot of our clients and workers in our program that the workers aren't low income, they're moderate income like myself. And our concerns are affordability of heating our homes in a very expensive state, just getting more expensive. I'm all about energy efficiency. That's why I got into this field and love it and helping people save energy. And I'm an outdoors person. I love the outdoors. But my major concern as a citizen of Vermont is affordability, and for our low income clients is affordability to stay in their homes when there isn't a full blown solution to switch from oil or propane or kerosene or even wood to heat pumps. We have a housing stock that is extremely chopped up, and there is no simple and expensive solution for many homes. Some there are, but for a lot of the homes we weatherize, and I wanted to add one other point, and then I want to stop because it's not not for me to comment here. I was more to listen, but a lot of we struggle with a lot of our clients having leaky roofs, vermiculite in their attics, structural repairs that can hinder them from getting weatherization, and we scrape to get funds to help them address those issues because our weatherization funds can't pay for that stuff, our normal weatherization funds. So we've tried to get clients to get low interest loans just to fix their roof, and they do not have the capability to take out any additional debt, or they have bad credit. They're living day to day and do not have funds to take out to fix a leaky roof, let alone switch to a heat pump. So that's my comment for this session. Thank you.
yeah. Annette,
So the things that people bring to me, and I don't go looking for it, but people want to talk to me about these issues are what Jeff just mentioned, that they want to, say, install heat pumps and their house is all chopped up and it's just not realistic to consider. It's not affordable. Even people who are who have the financial resources just don't have the ability to do that. I have my own problem in that I live off grid with solar and batteries, which I have since 1989, and I am dependent on propane. And there is no alternative, and there's nothing I can do. I have solar hot water. I have done everything that I possibly can, but there's no way I'm getting a heat pump because that would run at night. That would just drain my batteries. There's no way I'm getting a wood pellet stove that would run a fan at night. That would drain my batteries. And so some of the things that are put out as solutions are no solution to me. And one of my concerns is that one of the goals of this clean heat standard is to raise the price of fossil fuels, and it will cost me more money, no question about it, and with no alternatives. And I think that that's unequitable. And I'm a I would say low to moderate income person. I'm not making much money. And I'm also very concerned about the local propane dealer whose only product is propane. And so there are a lot of, I say this from my own personal perspective, but I know that I speak for a lot of people who really have no alternative propane. And we are living in my area. I'm in southwestern Vermont in Danby. If you look at Green Mountain Power's solar map, which shows the grid capacity, the entire area west of me and around me is all in red. It doesn't have the distribution capacity for electrification of what is envisioned. And so that I see as another equity challenge in terms of how to do the electrification that's envisioned by the policies and technologies that are being promoted. So there's something else I was going to say. I would like to see something put in place where weatherization is required first before people invest in a heat pump, for instance. But I also see that a lot of this is happening anyway. And so my overall reaction to this proposed clean heat standard is that it's just way too complicated. And I've been attending the meetings, and but I signed up for tonight and the first one to see what kind of public engagement that she got. And that's been one of the challenges in certainly in my work, which I've been doing for 25 years, and it's gotten a lot harder over this time to engage people. People are at this time, I would say, very overwhelmed. A lot of people are just on the edge. Their capacity is just not there to take on anything more. People are dealing with all kinds of personal issues and health issues and deaths and elderly parents. And it's just something that is going to be very challenging to do public engagement around, especially when there are just so many unanswered questions that, and frankly, from attending the meetings, almost look unanswerable to a certain extent. So, you know, how are you going to get more people into the next two meetings here? These are required as part of the legislation, and I have publicized them. I think I know one person who said that they signed up but probably wouldn't attend. I would say the start time at 7 is a bit late. I'd suggest starting at 6:30. That seems to work better for people.
The next one starts at 6.
I am trying to get people to attend these meetings and participate, but it is not an easily accessible topic. And the way this legislation is written is just very, very challenging for the public to engage in at this stage in the process. So, but I think I'll stop there for now.
So would your recommendation be that build the programs out first and then take it to the public?
I think that was for Annette, but I will say, I think having something more explanation of like what's being talked about, maybe a quick what the bill, like what the bill is supposed to do or what the goals of the bill are, as a way to say, and then we're trying to get your input to make sure that these things happen. To have something for them to kind of react to is probably better.
Okay. Have you seen our piece on what you need to know about Act 18?
I have seen it, yes, but I'm saying, like, if folks didn't read ahead, or I think having like something in this where you just kind of run through that so that folks like are thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jeff, looks like you're about to say something.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide whether I should say it or not. I think I'm looking at what you need to know about Act 18, and I fully stand behind the premise of it needs to be a one pager on the overview of the program and in plain language. And when you, no offense, we provide plain languages for our program because, plain language written to a reasonable education level. There's a lot of stuff in that the public isn't gonna isn't going to understand. And because there's not that much meat developed yet, it doesn't really say a lot, is my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, and we recognize that when Jameson did the first round of redactions, or it turned out to be like at an 11th grade level.
Yep.
And then we took this one pager to try to sculpt it down to a 6th grade level. And again, you know, we knew we needed to have just one page, which we've done, but you know,
Yeah, applauding the effort for sure. I just think might need a little bit more simple language, just my opinion, but
Right.
definitely well needed, because it's a complicated thing for sure.
Right. And we haven't seen anywhere else that has tried to put forth a plain language interpretation of Act 18. So this is a work in progress. We'll go over it again and yet again until we get it distilled. I mean, that's one of this energy legislation and the whole concept of energy credits is sometimes beyond the reach and comprehension of just your ordinary citizen. I mean, even for me, you know, I've read through it and I'm still scratching my head about, you know, who gets credits, how are they monetized, when are they, you know, do they have a what's the life cycle of a credit? Where do you
Same
exchange?
here. I'm right there with you. And I applaud the idea. It's a great, when you said you had a one pager, I was all excited. That's great. So
Yeah. Great. And that,
So the questions that you're asking are the sorts of things that are being asked by the technical advisory group. But I think that for the public, one of the things that I think about is the question to ask is, what is the role of the public? Because on the one hand, the public is the ultimate decider in terms of making a transition from fossil fuel to something else. But on the other hand, the obligated parties are the ones that have to earn the credits. So for me, I think about, well, how can I help my propane dealer stay in business? And that's perhaps not exactly the goal of the program, but it is something that I have to think about, because what it looks like to me is what this is going to do is force the smaller companies out of business. And then I'm going to be dealing with some of the bigger companies that, in terms of propane, do not have a very good reputation and tend to engage in price gouging and get more of a monopoly. So in the context of who owns the credits, some of the discussion is about, well, should the homeowner be the one who's investing? Should they be the ones who own the credits? So that would be a relevant question to ask people as members of the public, if you can get the public to participate, is, do you think if you're the one making the investment, are you the one that should own the credit? And then how does that transfer to your fuel dealer? Or should the fuel dealer who does the work, or some other installer who earns the credit, how does that get how does that ultimately enable the fuel dealer to earn the credits that are required? So that's sort of how I think about some of the ways to engage the public at this stage, is what role does the public play in this? Because the system that's proposed to be set up is all dependent on the public making these investments, but they're not the ones that ultimately are the ones that have to earn the credits. I'd
right.
say.
And also you know, if we divide the public into usable parts, So you have renters on the one hand. You have landlords. You have homeowners. Do we, in terms of a public outreach, do we advantage the landlords and the homeowners and the dealers over the renters? Because the renters have no power, or at least they'd be hard pressed to convince their landlord to invest thousands and thousands of dollars in heat pumps when the return on that investment for the landlord is zilch if they have the tenant pay for the heat.
It's a very challenging question to figure out even who the target is to engage. But one thing you said that I want to sort of respond to is that while I understand the need to try and simplify this really, really complicated program, I have learned to never underestimate the intelligence of Vermonters. Vermonters are very smart people, and it really does not matter the education level. I find that most people have a lot of common sense, and when they understand the concept, that I don't talk down to people because I think that they're very worthy of respect. This program has, and it's not just about electrification or heat pumps, but it's also apparently a lot of it is going to be met by biofuels. And so people who are using oil can continue to use oil, but have more of it be biofuels. And so that's something that actually is already happening. That's one of my sort of frustrations with what we're spending a lot of time on, is that weatherization is happening. People are installing heat pumps. Vermont Gas is working on getting renewable natural gas. The fuel dealers are offering biofuels. These things are already in process, and how much more does this clean heat standard actually add to this transition that I see is happening anyway? And so maybe another way to approach it in terms of the public outreach is how can this program speed things up, or will it? Because I don't know the answer to that, but I think that getting people's input on it might be worthwhile. And for people who have made investments, for instance, in oil furnaces, that there's fuel suppliers now offering biofuels and are willing to increase the amount of biofuels. That's something that will, what would a clean heat standard do to augment that? And
So are you saying that the clean heat standard doesn't add value to the work around reducing greenhouse gases?
I don't know if it does. I know that's the goal, but shall we call me a skeptic at this point, that because I see so much that's already happening. There's a lot of millions of dollars being put into these programs already. And so I would be interested to see what members of the public, if you can figure out how to get them to engage, would see how they would benefit from this clean heat standard.
Mm-hmm. So, Jeff, what kind of outreach effort have the weatherization program done over the years in
So
terms of reaching sort of the end consumer?
So we have 5, 6 local agencies that do the work, and we've never really, until recently, had to do much outreach. The program's well known. Folks that receive fuel assistance know that they they need to apply when they get a letter from the Economic Services Division. So we get a lot of folks that are getting fuel assistance apply. We have done some outreach through our Department for Children and Families, doing some ads to help, because our funding has gone up and we've, needed more homes to weatherize. So we've done some marketing through Front Porch Forum. I mean, I would recommend that. We've been marketing for jobs for our weatherization agencies and applicants for weatherization through Front Porch Forum. DCF had an account. We ran a couple of statewide Front Porch Forum ads. Workforce advertising and for clients is part of our
So,
worries currently. So
is
yeah.
your target,
What's that?
is your target the homeowner or the occupant of it?
Yep, both homeowner to apply, but also if they want a job, the weatherization program offers great career ladder in paying jobs with benefits. So the one and the same
Right, because
for services and for a job.
so my understanding of the fuel assistance program is that going
Yep.
to the renter, or is that going to the homeowner or the landlord?
It's the low income person has to live in a residence and be income eligible. And I'm not, I'm part of DCF and they are as well. So I don't speak professionally for their department, but I know them quite well. It's not the landlord, it's the low income resident that receives the benefit. I know that for a fact. Process, there's I won't get into the process,
Yeah.
but it's definitely the household.
Okay, and so there's no incentive for the landlord to change what he or she is doing because they have put the burden of heating their unit onto the tenant. And if the tenant gets, as part of the fuel assistance program, then at least.
Well, so we weatherize, sorry, I know, didn't mean to cut you off. I know where your question was. We weatherize a lot of rental properties, but the key is the rental properties have to be low income folks, and they may or may not be getting fuel assistance. That piece I can't speak to, but I know that there is a benefit for both the resident, the low income resident in a rental property, as well as the building owner, regardless of who pays the heat. So that's got to be true. That is true for any building owner who gets weatherization. The building is going to be more durable, more comfortable for the occupant, which leads to happier occupant, which you know what that means. They're going to more apt to pay their rent, not complain. There is benefits to weatherizing a rental property for both the building owner and the resident, regardless of who pays the heat. Now, when you throw in the cost of it, that may change things and the payback. Some people may look at payback in years more than others do. I mean, it's all people make decisions based on different things, but there is definitely a benefit whenever any building gets weatherized.
Okay.
So a couple of things that come to mind that are sort of related. People tell me, and I will say that I've heard this from a number of people who are very active in climate change and very focused on reducing emissions, that they made the investments in heat pumps and found that it caused their electric bill to become unaffordable, and that they use the heat pumps in the shoulder months, but turn them off for the cold parts of winter. So this then makes me think about people who are currently getting fuel assistance like LIHEAP, and if they are transitioning away from a fossil fuel to a heat pump, what kind of programs are there for fuel for electric bill assistance if they're in a position where they need to get assistance in paying their electric bill? And is that something that is going to be part of the development of the clean heat standard?
I
I'll
don't
just
know.
say, I know Green Mountain Power and the other utilities have ratepayer assistance programs already that exist for electric customers. And I know there's a study that may pass as part of the miscellaneous PUC bill this year that would have a bigger study on how to effectively help with cost stabilization in the electric sector. So there's those. And I'll just say, I mean, I have heat pumps that I use all winter. The newest heat pumps, are probably 3 years old. The newest heat pumps are rated to -20 degrees. And I know many people who have heat pumps that use them all year and don't, and I think there's different houses and different things. I'm in an 1893 farmhouse that does well with heat pumps. We use a little bit of baseboard heat as a backup, but it's mostly heat pumps. So I think there's different experiences. I know there's contractors in the state that have been installing heat pumps successfully for 20 years, and some who are just getting into it. So I think it really depends on the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just want to quickly say, from my standpoint, things correctly, weatherization, installing heat pumps, tandem with client or customer education. You've got to, it can't be just slam something in and don't explain. It's got to be done right, and it's got to be in tandem with good client education. Is what we find in weatherization works best, I should say.
I'm going to go back to something that Annette suggested, and pardon me if I get this wrong, Annette, but it sounded to me like if there's no if the clean heat standard doesn't add value to the current offerings, energy saving offerings, then why have it? Is this just a piece of legislation that should have never been passed?
Are you asking my opinion of that?
Yes.
I think that there are ideas, there are good ideas, and there are bad ideas. I will point to one that's been in the news lately, and that is electricity deregulation. It was proposed in Vermont back in the late 90s, and almost all the surrounding states chose not to do it, or chose to do it, but Vermont at the last minute didn't. It was something that was in legislation for several years. There's an article out, I think today, in the Boston Globe, and they've been some in recent weeks, about how it hasn't worked. It's especially been harmful to low-income people, and the state of Massachusetts is looking at going back to a regulated marketplace and not having deregulation. This clean heat standard, to my mind, is somewhat similar in that it is creating an overly complex system that is well-intentioned, but is, I mean, I will say, just from attending the meetings that I've been attending, the conversations are a little bit circular because there really isn't a good answer. Sometimes the PUC is going to have to make decisions and is going to have to come up with a policy to present to the legislature. But when I look at all the programs and all the money that's being spent, I don't see how it is doing something other than placing a lot of burdens right now on the fossil fuel providers, because they're having trouble with their programs, for instance, that have to do with advanced purchases. So this affects them. And I don't want to in any way give the impression that I'm a fan of fossil fuels. I got my start opposing a $1 billion natural gas power plant and pipeline project that was heavily supported by the governor back in 1999. And I looked at that and said, this is the wrong direction for Vermont. And Solar Works in Vermont, that was my first letter to the editor. So when I look at a policy like this, I try and look at it objectively in terms of how it is a benefit to the people who live here. And when people come up to me and say, look, I've tried, I don't know how to do a heat pump. I can't do it in my house, or I'm really worried about my electric bill, or that things are just costing so much right now. And so, you know, the idea is that fossil fuels are volatile and they're rising in prices. And so this is a way of giving people more stability, but I don't see that electricity is necessarily going to be that stable either. So I see that the price of electricity is going to go up. And I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how to forecast the future, but I'll be fascinated to see how this clean heat standard comes together, because I'm pretty good at the complex thinking, and I can't get a handle on how this is going to work in a way that is beneficial. So you know, for the people who are hired specifically to do the program, who are in this meeting, I wish you luck. I'm not saying don't try, but I really, I think it's a very challenging piece of legislation to comply with.
Had to get some water. Uh, so where do we go? Where do we go from here? From what I gathered thus far is we need to further simplify the one pager that we have that would make it even more understandable and compelling for the general public. That's one takeaway. Another is working with existing programs in terms of outreach, and just in terms of getting the word out about the clean heat standard. And is there anything else that we could do that would advance the clean heat standard?
Chris, I'm make an offer I believe we've made to someone at your organization, at least since already, which is happy to help you put together a roundtable of town energy committee members. These are volunteers in their communities across the state to talk about this stuff. I mean, we're happy to help figure that out in a timely manner. We have been doing webinars every 2 weeks and get from between 50 and 100 usually on our webinars. We're hosting an in-person summit June 1st that'll have 160 people at it. So we're happy to kind of pull together who we can, who's interested in talking about this topic.
Okay. All right. We'll follow up with you offline about that. And I did get, I think it was Mia. I responded to Mia. Is it Mia Wilson?
Mia Watson, who's on the
Mia
Equity
Watson.
Advisory Group. Yeah.
Yes. Who mentioned that, and I will follow up with you.
I think it might be helpful in the material that I saw that you put out. It seemed like you were trying to sell it to people. And it might be helpful to frame it in terms of wanting to hear from people about and get their ideas on how it could work, and try and engage input rather than trying to explain it and have it be more of a sales pitch. I think maybe more inviting rather than promotional might be helpful.
Hmm. That makes sense in the sense that we don't have a product yet. I mean, the standard has yet to be established. So yeah, I like that. I like that idea. Hmm.
And then if you ask people, we want to hear from you about, have you made these transitions? How would you go about making these transitions? What are your ideas on how, people get engaged when their self-interest is affected? That's sort of the bane of my work, is that I deal with a lot of people who are all of a sudden very affected by something that affects their self-interest. And that's when they get engaged. And so figure out how to frame things so that, this can affect your life going forward, how to make it personal to people, so that they want to hear from you, want to hear from them, and that their voices matter. Because I think that's as important at this stage as anything. Is really, I've in attending the climate council meetings, one of the people who spoke from the Just Transitions subcommittee talked about, meet us where we are, hear us. Don't, and I think she might even have been she was speaking specifically about the clean heat standard. Don't go, or maybe she also talked about electric vehicles. Don't go putting these requirements in place if you haven't heard from us yet. Don't make these top-down choices without talking to the people who are most affected and least able to comply with these things. I thought it was a very effective and thoughtful comment that she made, that how do you come to the people where they are, meet us where we are. So maybe you can figure out how to put that into practice.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of a 30-second pitch to a renter. And what would pique the interest of a renter to be involved in this conversation around the clean heat standard?
Well, the first thing is to hear what people's challenges are. What issues are you dealing with as a renter when it comes to your heating? Are you cold? Are you not comfortable? Can you not afford it? I mean, hear from them first before you go trying to tell them what they should uh, think about, or how the clean heat standard can help them. But first, gather the information from people about what it is that they need. Sort of like what I started out saying. People would come up to me and say, I really want to do heat pumps, but my house is all chopped up and it just doesn't it's not affordable. How many, what kinds of issues are Vermonters struggling with first, and that's really where this public outreach can be really beneficial to the decision makers.
So I'm going to ask Gemma if you would make a comment about that.
I was just going to say that's why I turned my video back on and unmuted myself. Just even speaking from my personal anecdotal perspective, I think that my experience here in Vermont is going to be applicable to a whole lot of people. I'm a renter, and I know very well that any dollar that my landlord spends on this building is an excuse to raise my rent, and I don't want my rent to go up. I'm also an environmental activist, and my home is heated with heating oil, and I would like it to have a much lower impact on the environment. But also, because I'm an environmental activist, I keep my heat set at 64 degrees. all winter. And when I tell my friends in other parts of the country that my home is only heated to 64 degrees, the shock that is on their faces is unbelievable. It's not comfortable. Um, but let me just say that, in October of 2020, when I bought oil, it cost $1.87 a gallon. And when I bought oil 2 years later in 2022, it cost almost $6 a gallon. And last year, when I bought oil again, it had dropped down to about $4 a gallon. A lot of that has to do with the invasion of Ukraine and what that did to global oil markets. But this old building that I live in, which is a fourplex, is actually relatively well insulated for its age. And the landlord did have the entire roof of the whole complex replaced. I want to say about 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember exactly when, but I'm sure that they insulated the roof better than it was when they redid the roof. But it's an old building, and like I don't even have it. It's a oil-fired forced hot air furnace. I don't even have a register in my bathroom. So if I keep the bathroom door closed in winter, the pipes will freeze because the supply pipes go up the exterior wall of the building. In order for the heating system in this unit to be replaced, the unit would have to be vacated. I'd have to move someplace else for, probably at least a month in order for that to be done. And in today's housing market, how does that even happen? I mean, even if the money were available for me to just pick up and move to another place, there's no place to move to, you know? These are the challenges we're facing. And the legislature went and passed Act 18. And if you look at the operable part of the legislation, the obligated parties in Act 18 are the fuel dealers. And that's it. Fuel dealers are obligated to obtain clean heat credits. And the Public Utilities Commission is charged with creating a system by which this is going to happen. There's no hard targets put into place as to how much reduction has to take place. There's no incentives for homeowners to actually upgrade systems or landlords to upgrade systems. For a landlord that's paying the heating bill, obviously there's an incentive for them to do so. But for every other landlord, it's an expense for them for which they're going to expect to recoup in rental costs. And that's a big red flag for everybody who rents in Vermont. I do a lot of demographic research as a result of my work with Vermont Partnership. And I can tell you that about 65% of people in the Brattleboro CDP, census designated place, which is, the downtown urban area of Brattleboro, are renters, 65%. And not all of them are going to be covered under, heat and hot water included. I would very much like my house to be warmer in winter. I would love to burn more oil and make my house 68 degrees, but I don't want to pay the money and I don't want to pollute the environment. But I can tell you that when I bought 200 gallons of oil last fall at the beginning of the season, it cost me a little over $800 to buy that. So if I divide that $800 into, say, 9 months of the heating season, that means my electric bill could go up about $90 a month before I would be paying more money than I was before. Now, I'm willing to pay a little bit more if it means a cleaner environment. But the reality is that I don't want to pay that much more, And in order for the oil system to be replaced in this building, somebody would have to pay thousands of dollars to have all of that ripped out. And oh, by the way, that oil tank downstairs, that's hazardous waste now. So, that has to be handled in a certain manner. I'd have to vacate the building, find a new place to live, and somebody's got to foot the bill. All of which is ultimately going to make my rent go up. Now, rent's going to go up anyway. We all know that. But those are the concerns that other renters are going to have. We're already in a constrained housing market and rents are going up. My rent's been raised, but in the past 2 years. Every time my my lease renewal comes around, my landlord raises the rent again. Why? Because they can. They claim, oh, it's inflation pressures. Well, you're raising the rent is the inflation pressure. You know, it's not some external force that's causing you to raise the rent. You are part of the system. It's like, you know, when we talk about, alleviating traffic concerns, like you're not stuck in traffic, you are the traffic.
Mhm.
But fact remains that the two largest sectors of consumption for fossil fuels in our society are transportation and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And of course, we live in a northern climate, so most of that is heating. I could go on, for hours.
So I found that really valuable, Gemma, and I think that if we
Yes.
had a whole lot of people in a meeting telling their story, we would all learn an awful lot about what Vermonters need, what the program
Yeah.
really needs to look like. And so that's how I would love to see these public outreach meetings go. Tell us your story. And everybody here has their own story. Even, I don't want to discount the people who work for state agencies. You all have your own story of what your challenges are with heating. I think it's a very good way to help inform the process.
Mhm.
And I'd also just like to mention, as a matter of anecdote, is I'm Filipino. You know, half of my genes come from about 3 degrees north of the equator. The Vermont climate is very cold to me. I would very much like to have a much warmer life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the real challenge is, I mean, we could have 100 Gemmas tell us identical stories. Where are the pressure points that would alleviate the cost of her heating?
Well, yeah, and I appreciate the story, Gemma. I mean, hearing how in the current system, right, the status quo, your heat costs went up 230% pretty much
Yeah.
overnight, and then now they're back down, but they're still, over double what they were. Like, our status quo is broken
Yeah.
already for heating, right? So there has to be a fix. Like, like this bill has to look towards fixes, because it's not like if we do nothing, things are okay. Because the status quo right now is totally broken.
And I'd like to point out that as somebody who lives in the populated, on the edge of the populated downtown area of Brattleboro, in a fourplex, I'm living in a condition that's relatively efficient compared to a lot of people in Vermont who are living in even older buildings, far flung in the hills, that are even, less well insulated. And just the fact that they live in a, standalone single family household means that they have a much higher ratio of exterior walls to enclosed volume. I've got 2 apartments on either side of me that insulate me from the outdoors.
Mhm. Yeah. Right. Well, I are there any final comments? We're coming up on 8:30. And I want to thank Gemma for her sharing her life experience with us on this topic. And again, I'm thinking if we heard from 100 Gemmas, where would the pressure points be on the system to alleviate the cost to the end user? Or
I have to say, I'm surprised that we've had a number of people in the fuel industry sign up for these meetings. And I'm surprised that none of them showed up tonight, because I really would have thought that, being as they are the only obligated parties under Act 18, that they would be raring to speak about, what they want to see happen. They're the ones who are going to be obligated to meet the standard, whatever the standard turns out to be. and a standard has to be set because that's what the legislature has decided.
Mhm.
My question is, how do we turn that obligation on the fuel dealers into incentives for landlords and homeowners to upgrade systems and to, do whatever is necessary in order to generate what are ultimately going to be energy credits that the fuel dealers can claim to meet the requirements of the bill?
Yeah. Any other final comments? Not, I'd like to thank everyone for participating, sharing what it is you do. We have a fairly good idea of where and how the clean heat standard can be improved in terms of community engagement and public engagement. And want to thank everyone. With that,
Thank you.
You know what? I'd like to just add one more thing, and that's that I've read, a couple of times in the past year that the average Vermont household uses about 800 to 1,200 gallons of oil to get through a heating season. I use less than 200 to heat my place at 64 degrees. I bought 150 gallons last year when it was almost $6 a gallon, and I ended up shutting off the furnace a month early because I was at the bottom of the tank. This year, I was able to get 200 gallons because the price dropped from $5.90 a gallon to a little over $4, about $4.10. And so I've still got plenty of oil left to make it through until May 15th, which is the last frost date around here.
yeah.
But
Just how large is your apartment? How many square feet is your apartment?
to tell you the truth, I have no idea. It is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment that is 2 floors, plus it has a what's the word I'm looking for? A finished attic, and a full basement. But it's, it's by no means a large apartment.
Mhm.
And again, it's in a 4-plex, so I'm insulated. I'm in an interior unit, so I'm a bit insulated. But like I said, I only bought 200 gallons this year, and I'll make it through to May 15th and still have oil in the tank. But the average family in Vermont who lives up in the hills, they're buying 1,000 gallons of oil a year.
Right. Okay. All right. I want to thank everyone. And you'll be hearing from us later for the next session. Hopefully we'll have fuel dealers show up that didn't show up this time around. All right. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Take care.
Night.
Bye.
Hi. Thanks.
Sure. I just want to say that I have to apologize because I hadn't really read through Act 18. And at fall, I started reading through the bill as enacted, and it's really not what I thought it was.
Oh, yeah. Everyone that I've spoken to, from the cabinet secretaries to the folks at the Public Utilities Commission, to the Equity Advisory Group, the Technical Advisory Group, they're going around in circles.
Yeah, I can imagine why. I mean, I'm looking at this and, the operative text of the bill is that, obligated parties shall reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The commission shall establish or adopt a system of tradable clean heat credits earned from the delivery of clean heat measures that reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
the obligated party shall obtain a required amount of clean heat credits, blah, blah, blah. The only obligated parties under this bill are the fuel dealers.
Right.
So, you know, and it, you know, and then all it goes on to say is that the commission shall establish a number of clean heat credits that they're obligated to retire. It doesn't say amounts, percentages, or anything. It just says they will create a standard. And I'm just like,